really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
Now, more than a third of adults living in the UK's most deprived areas aren't getting enough exercise. That's according to new research from Sport England, which has announced plans to invest in facilities in those parts of the country that are struggling the most. So we can talk now to the group's Chief Executive, Tim Hollingsworth. Very good morning to you, Tim. Thanks very much indeed for talking to us. So you're warning about a postcode lottery when it comes to exercise. Give us an idea of the challenges that people in some of those more deprived areas are facing when it comes to keeping fit.
Good morning, Anna. Yes, you just explained the situation really well. What we don't have is a level playing field in sport and physical activity when it comes to opportunity. If you're living in some of the most affluent parts of this country, you are almost twice as likely to live a more active life. And as you just said, some of the most deprived parts of our communities have the least active people. And of course, what that translates to is not just their own sense of opportunity to be active and play sport, but the economic consequences of that are quite significant too, and the cost of the health service. So our ambition, we announced a major package of investment. It's £250 million of lottery, national lottery and government exchequer money over the next 5 years. And we announced over the last day 53 of the places in this country that are in that bottom 10% of deprived communities who will be working with very closely and in a very targeted way to make sure they get what they need.
Well, yes, because what's the answer here? I mean, is this all about people not being able to afford to go to gyms, or is it about simple access to the facilities? What's at the root of the problem?
It's a combination of the two. What you tend to see is the correlation between the affluence of a community and the opportunity to be active so that you can have more places and spaces. And as you rightly say, the facilities, the clubs and the community groups in those areas are mostly likely to be more active as well. So it just becomes a problem that needs to be fixed in a very different way. I think historically, we've just assumed that it's about provision. It's not. It's actually about talking to the communities, working with the communities and understanding what they need. So our investment isn't just the money, it's also the opportunity to engage the locally trusted organisations, the local authorities, the active partnerships in the region, the sports clubs, and say, right, what's missing? What do you need? Is it a facility? Is it a programme? Can we help maybe with the support for people or coaches or maybe some bikes or whatever it is? The mix is important. No one place, not every place is different. You know, there's no one size fits all solution.
Surely, Tim, time is an issue as well. A lot of people who are, working a 12-hour shift, the last thing they feel like doing when they get home is doing a few burpees in their living room or going for a run.
You're absolutely right, Jamie, and I think that's another thing that is a factor in this. And we know the benefit is there for us all, right? So there's great research that we've published in the last day or so, which suggests that every pound that we invest in sport and physical activity in England returns £4.20 in social and economic benefit to the nation. So why wouldn't we want to do this? But you're right. It's about giving that disproportionate focus to those communities who previously have felt that they've been underserved by sport and physical activity, who find it harder to access, but most importantly, working with those communities in a very targeted, place-based way so that they actually get the answers and the opportunities that work for them.
And obviously public facilities, hugely important, and investment in them obviously very welcome. But what about schools as well? Because presumably setting habits young is important. And if kids aren't getting enough exercise, they're not necessarily going to be fit adults as well. What do you do about that when after-school clubs are so expensive?
I think this is possibly the biggest challenge we face as a nation, actually, and it's been exacerbated by COVID, but was there anyway. In the data that we have, we know that actually less than half of our children and young people in this country are doing what the chief medical officer requires to have an active life as a young person, which is about an hour a day on average. I think there's two answers, and I think in school, we need to be a lot more thoughtful about building activity into the school day. Making it part of the core curriculum, in my view, would be a hugely positive step. But looking at just what can schools do in and around the curriculum and the classes to make sure that their young people are moving. And then out of school, how are we making sure, as you say, that there is the access to those community groups and organisations who can help. There's some great examples, by the way, in Blackburn and in Pennine. We've seen the madrasas amongst some of the Muslim communities working much more actively to get their young people to be moving after school. There are lots of ways you can do it, working with organisations, working with community groups, rather than assuming there's a top-down single national solution.
And Tim, a message surely that you're really keen to get across is that sport doesn't have to cost a fortune to stay fit. It doesn't have to be extortionate to have a gym membership or to play golf or whatever you might want to do. It costs nothing to put on a pair of trainers, go for a run. It costs nothing to do a few sit-ups and a few press-ups.
It costs nothing to go for a walk, Jamie, and for some people who are inactive, that would be the starting point. And, you know, we should be encouraging everything. The most important thing is that we want a nation that moves. Now, I'm a huge sports fan, so are you. We love, you know, just covering the Formula One. You got the football last night. But actually, for some people, just being active, just moving, just finding a way to do it, whether it's with friends or alone, whether it's in a group, going to a local park, finding the opportunity, kicking a football around, or maybe doing it in a more organised way. If we can change that narrative to be one of saying, as long as we're a nation that's moving, we're going in the right direction.
OK, well, Tim Hollingsworth, really interesting to hear from you this morning. Thanks very much indeed. And I might even try and put my trainers on later.
There you go. You've been inspired now.
I probably won't. I'm just saying bold promises.
I think when your alarm goes off at 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning, you have an excuse.
He's let me off. I've got away with it. Do stay with us. We've got all the top stories and all the sport, of course, coming up after the break. Don't go away.